Part 2. Iolcus. A city on the Thessalian coast where the harbor smells of salt and old ambition, and where two branches of a royal family have spent a generation pretending not to remember what happened between them. Aeson was alive. That much, at least, Pelias had conceded. His half-brother lived in the palace, not as a prisoner exactly, but not as a free man either. A man kept alive as proof of his usurper and Apos' mercy, which is a particular kind of cruelty. Aeson had a son. He had sent that son away to the slopes of Pelion, to the centaur Chiron, with one instruction: survive. Jason survived. More than survived, he learned. 20 years on Pelion with a teacher who had seen gods and fought centaurs and trained the best men of every generation. The morning Jason left, the last morning, Chiron walked with him to the edge of the forest. Chiron was half horse and ancient, and he had watched a great many young men walk down from Pelion toward their fates. He had learned not to predict what those fates would be. He looked at Jason for a long time.
You are going to tell me to be careful.
Chiron shook his head. He said, be worth the trouble you and Apos were about to cause. Jason came down to the river Anorus at flood stage. An old woman stood on the bank, unable to cross. He did not think about it. He picked her up and waded into the current. The riverbed was deep and unstable, and by the time he reached the far bank, one of his sandals was gone, sucked into the mud. The old woman thanked him and walked away into the morning. She was Hera. He would not learn that for years. Some debts take a long time to collect. Jason arrived in Iolcus on a festival day, when the city was crowded and Pelias was making sacrifices at the harbor temple. He walked through the crowd barefoot on one side, wearing a leopard skin from the mountains, and people stepped aside without fully understanding why. Pelias turned from the altar and saw a young man with one sandal, and the oracle and Apos' words, 20 years old, came back to him with the weight of a stone dropped from height. The oracle had said, beware the one who comes with one sandal. For 20 years Pelias had checked feet. Here, finally, was the foot.
You, stranger.
I am Jason, son of Aeson. I have come to claim the throne my father was owed.
Son of Aeson. That is a name I have not heard spoken aloud in some time.
I imagine not.
Walk with me. I have a proposal that may serve us both. I am an old man, Jason. I have held this throne for 20 years. My bones tell me the truth about that. But the kingdom has been well managed. The harbor runs. The grain stores are full.
And my father lives in rooms without windows.
He lives? That is more than some men in his situation receive.
Is that your offer? That he lives?
My offer is the Golden Fleece. The shade of Phrixus has been troubling this kingdom. The oracle says the fleece of the ram that carried him to Colchis must be brought home to Greece. I am too old for such a voyage. But you are young and strong and trained by the best teacher the age has known. Bring the fleece to Iolcus. The throne is yours. Your father walks free.
It was, of course, a death sentence dressed in opportunity. Pelias knew this. Jason almost certainly knew this. He said yes. The news went out across Greece. Jason, son of Aeson, was assembling a crew for a voyage to the edge of the world. He needed the best. He would take all comers. The response surprised even him. They came from Sparta. from Thebes, from Caledon and Arcadia and the islands. Heroes in the prime of their generation, men whose names were already being told around fires. Heracles came. The strongest man alive, who could uproot trees and slay lions, arrived at the harbor with his companion Hylas and agreed to row. Orpheus came. The musician whose playing could stop rivers and move stones agreed to keep time at the oars. Castor and Pollux, the Dioscuri, twin sons of Zeus, arrived together as they always did, one mortal, one divine, so inseparable the gods had made them a single constellation. Pelias came. Atalanta tried to come, the only woman among the heroes, and was turned away, though the sources disagree on whether Jason made this decision or the heroes collectively and whether Atalanta accepted it graciously or not at all. The ship was built by Argus, a craftsman of the first rank, from timber cut on Pelion. Athena herself came to supervise the keel, and from the sacred grove of Zeus at Dodona she brought a plank of divine oak that was set into the bow. The plank could speak. Not often. Not on demand. But at moments of genuine crisis, it would produce sound, a warning, a direction, a whisper from the divine world. They named the ship Argo, for Argus. The launch day was clear. The sea was flat. 50 men put their shoulders to the hull and walked it into the water and then climbed aboard and picked up their oars. Jason stood at the stern. He had spent the previous night with his father, in the windowless rooms, and had not told him how long he would be gone, because he did not know, and because the honest answer might have been forever. Orpheus played as they launched. The lyre was strung from the gut of animals, but the music that came from it was something else entirely, something that made the water seem to lean in and the oarsmen pull stronger than their bodies could explain.
Row.
And they rowed. Iolcus shrank behind them. The sea opened ahead. East. Their first stop was Lemnos, an island that had recently undergone a catastrophe the sources describe in careful, qualified terms. The women of Lemnos had killed all the men. The details of why are murky. Crimes against guest right. A refusal to properly honor the gods. Whatever the cause, when the Argo arrived, the island was run entirely by women, and they were not initially pleased to see 50 armed strangers rowing toward their harbor. Queen Hypsipyle sent a herald to the ship. The herald asked what they wanted. Jason said, safe harbor and fresh water. Nothing more. Hypsipyle invited them to the palace instead. The Argonauts stayed on Lemnos for, the sources disagree, somewhere between a few days and a year. Long enough that when they finally left, several of them left children behind. It was Heracles who finally ended the stay. He walked through the feasting hall one morning and looked at the assembled heroes and said, simply, "We going, or not?" They went. North through the Hellespont, the strait that bore Helle and Apos' name, and into the Propontis, toward the land of the Doliones and their king Cyzicus, who received them well and who was later killed by accident in a nighttime battle when the Argonauts, returning from a storm, were mistaken for enemies in the dark. It was that kind of voyage. At a wooded shore near Mysia, Heracles went to cut a new oar, his head snapped from the force of his rowing. He took Hylas with him into the forest to find timber. Hylas did not come back. He had gone to a spring to fill a water jar, and a naiad, a water nymph, who had seen his beauty reflected in her pool, had reached up and pulled him in. Heracles searched. He called the name in the forest until his voice cracked and the trees gave nothing back. The Argo had to leave. Winds and currents and the logic of quests do not wait for grief. Heracles stayed. He was not with them when they sailed on, and he was not with them when they returned, and the greatest hero of the age left the Golden Fleece expedition early, searching for a boy in a forest, which tells you something about what love and strength actually are and how they relate to each other.
We sail.
At the coast of the Bebrycians, they encountered King Aeetes, who had a custom: every stranger who landed on his shore must fight him in boxing, and had not yet lost. Polydeuces, one of the divine twins, son of Zeus, accepted the challenge. The fight was brutal. Aeetes was enormous and experienced and had killed many men this way. Polydeuces, however, was the son of a god, and gods are patient in a way that mortal kings who rely on strength alone find confusing right until the moment they do not find anything at all. They entered the Euxine, the Black Sea, through the Bosphorus, and the sea changed character immediately. The Aegean has a certain Mediterranean warmth about it, even in storms. The Euxine is older and colder and less interested in what you think of it. Ahead, somewhere in the grey east, was the land of Phineus. Phineus, the blind prophet of the Euxine coast. He had been given the gift of seeing the future, the whole future, not just the comfortable parts, and had used it so freely, and so accurately, that the gods had taken his sight. And they had sent the Harpies.
I hear a ship. Many oars. 50 men, or close to it. I know who you are. I have waited a very long time for this oar stroke.
If we help you, you and Apos, tell us the way through to Colchis?
I will tell you what I know of the Symplegades. And I will tell you which of the things that will happen to you are worth worrying about, and which are not.
Can you tell us which of us will die?
I can. But I will not. There are things that men are better off not knowing until they happen. Trust me on this. I have thought about it longer than you and Apos, been alive.
Aeetes and Calais were sons of Boreas, the north wind. They had wings at their ankles, or their shoulders, depending on which source you prefer, and they could fly. They chased the Harpies. Not to kill them, the Harpies were divine and could not be killed by mortal hands, but to drive them far enough that they would not return. A divine messenger stopped the pursuit at the Strophades Islands and told Aeetes and Calais that the Harpies were now forbidden from tormenting Phineus. The deal was made at the divine level. The Harpies did not return. Phineus ate. Slowly. With the dignity of a man who has not been able to finish a meal in living memory and intends to savor this one. When he was done, he wiped his hands, turned his blank eyes toward
the Symplegades. 2 rocks at the mouth of the Euxine that clash together and apart. No ship has passed through them. None. Release a dove. If the dove makes it, row. Row as you have never rowed. The rocks will clip the tail of the dove, they will clip the stern of your ship, but they will not destroy you. After your ship passes, the rocks will fix in place. You will be the last. Understand this. You will be the reason they stop moving.
What else?
In Colchis you will need a woman and Apos, as help. Pay attention to who helps you. People who help you at great cost to themselves are worth more than kingdoms.
They saw the Symplegades from a distance on a grey morning. 2 dark shapes on the horizon that at first looked like headlands. Then they moved. Not fast, not dramatically, just a slow, enormous grinding shift. One toward the other. Then back. Like breathing. Like something very old and very patient waiting for the next thing to try.
Oars up. Hold position. Watch the rocks. Count the time between closings.
They watched for 10 minutes. 20. Counting. The rocks opened, ground together, opened again. There was a rhythm to it if you waited long enough to find it.
Do you have the count?
A voice from midship, yes.
Then we go on my word. Oars ready. Watch the dove.
The dove was white. It flew forward without hesitation, because birds do not understand clashing rocks in the same way men do, or perhaps because it understood perfectly and had simply made a different calculation. It went through. The rocks came together. The tail feathers, just the tail, disappeared in the grinding. The dove came out the other side.
Row.
50 men pulled on 50 oars with everything they had. The Argo went into the gap at a speed that surprised even the rocks, which had spent an age stopping ships. The rocks began to close. Poseidon, who had watched all of this with the particular interest of a god who controls such things and was waiting to see how it ended, sent a wave. The wave lifted the stern. The rocks closed. The stern of the Argo, just the carved ornament at the very end, was clipped. Like the dove and Apos' tail feathers. Like a story repeating itself at slightly different scales. The ship was through. The simple gates settled. They did not move again. The rocks that had been a terror for every sailor who knew of them became, from that day forward, just rocks. Open water. The Black Sea, cold and vast and unfamiliar. Someone in the stern laughed. Then someone else. Then the whole crew, that specific laughter that happens when a thing that should have killed you doesn't, and Apos, and your body is flooded with the difference between those two outcomes. At the island of Ars, a desolate rock in the middle of the Euxine sacred to the war god, they were attacked by birds with bronze feathers that they shook like rain. The Argonauts banged their weapons on their shields and shouted, and eventually the birds fled. On the island, they found the sons of Phrixus and Apos, own sons, who had been shipwrecked there trying to sail west to Iolcus to claim their grandfather Athamas and Apos' estate. The coincidence is so convenient it seems divine. Which is, perhaps, the point. Argus, son of Phrixus, told Jason the route to Colchis. He told him about Aeetes, his grandfather, the king, and about the fleece, and about the dragon, and about the labors Aeetes was likely to impose on anyone who came asking for it.
What does your grandfather most fear?
Argus thought for a moment. He said, an oracle. That a stranger will come and take what he has built. He has arranged his entire kingdom to prevent it. But the oracle is the kind that cannot be prevented by arrangement. They made landfall at the mouth of the Phasis as the sun was setting. The mountains of Colchis rose behind the coast in long dark ridges. The river mouth smelled of different soil, richer, older, more mineral than anything they had sailed through. No one spoke for a while.
How far do you think we are from Iolcus?
Argus counted in his head. He said, very far.
Good. Then everything from here on is territory no one has claimed yet.
In the palace of Aeetes had been told of the ship. He was told about it before the Argonauts themselves had decided on a plan. Colchis had watchers on the river mouth for precisely this kind of arrival. He sat in his great hall and thought about what a ship full of Greek heroes arriving at his river mouth was likely to mean.
The oracle walks to its own schedule. Well, we shall see.
Medea did not know about the ship yet. She was in her rooms preparing the implements for the morning and Apos' ritual at the temple of Hecate, measuring dried herbs by weight, checking the condition of the sacred oils, organizing with the precision of someone who has done this every day for years and for whom precision is itself a form of devotion. She was 18 years old and had never been further from this palace than the temple. She had been trained for a life of sacred precision in a world that was, at this moment, sailing toward her at the In the morning Jason took Telamon and Augeas, two of the senior Argonauts, and walked to the palace of Aeetes to announce himself and state his purpose. Heron shrouded them in mist for the journey through the city, which meant they arrived at the palace gate without being intercepted, questioned, or killed, which was a reasonable precaution given that they were 3 armed Greeks walking through a foreign capital. Aeetes received them in his great hall. Chalciope, his elder daughter, Phrixus and Apos' widow, came running to meet them because she recognized Argus and the other sons of Phrixus among the crew she heard about. Medea came to the hall out of curiosity. Aphrodite and Apos' arrow, as the sources say, was already loosed before either of them had spoken a word. She saw him across the room. A young Greek, 30 men and Apos' worth of presents, somehow, in a single body, standing before her father and Apos' throne with the careful ease of someone trained to be exactly where he is and not to show what it costs him. Medea felt something she did not have a clean name for. She was a woman of precise language and trained observation, and this thing had no category in her experience.
That is going to be a problem.
Great Aeetes, son of Helios. I am Jason, son of Ezon, of Iolcus. We have come a long way and under the protection of the gods to ask for the Golden Fleece, to carry it home to Greece and lay to rest the shade of Phrixus, whose bones cry out from your land.
A long speech. Well delivered. You have practiced it.
I have had time. The voyage was long.
I will consider it. Tonight you are my guests. Tomorrow we speak of terms.
That night, Aeetes met with his inner circle. His private assessment of the situation was not diplomatic.
Greeks. In my harbor, asking for the fleece. This is either the oracle arriving at last or a very sophisticated robbery attempt. Perhaps both.
His advisors suggested various things. Kill them in their sleep. Arrest them at the feast. Set fire to the ship.
No. The guest right was spoken. Zeus watches. We use the trial instead. If they survive it, and they will not, then the gods have spoken. If they do not survive it, problem solved. I was once young. I understand ambition. And so I will offer you this: prove yourself worthy of the fleece. Prove to me that you are the man the gods are sending, if they are sending anyone, and I will give it to you.
What is the trial?
My bulls. I use them myself when I must plow the field of Ares. They breathe fire. Their hooves are bronze. You will yoke them, plow the field, and sow it with the dragon and Apos' teeth I give you.
And when the field is sown?
Then we speak further. Complete the task. Then we speak.
Jason walked out of the feast and sat by the river. The phases moved past him, dark and cold, carrying the sediment of mountains he had never seen. Fire-breathing bulls. Dragon and Apos' teeth. No problem. He put his face in his hands.
We came all this way. We broke through the Symplegades. We crossed the whole Euxine and arrived at the right place. And now this.
A voice behind him, quiet. Chalciope sat beside him at the river.
My father and Apos' trial has not been survived by anyone.
I noticed.
But my father and Apos' trial has also never been set against someone with my sister and Apos' particular capabilities.
Your sister.
Medea. She is what she is. And she has been asking, ever since you arrived, whether any of my sons have spoken with you. Which is not the kind of question she usually asks.
What are you suggesting?
I am suggesting you be in the grove.
Medea did not sleep. This is described in Apollonius of Rhodes, who writes about the Golden Fleece in the 3rd century BCE and is the fullest surviving source on Medea and Apos' interior, with a level of psychological detail unusual for ancient epic. He wants us to feel her thinking.
If I help him, my father will know. If my father knows, I cannot stay here. If I cannot stay here, I have nothing. Everything I know is here. This temple, these people, my work, my sister. But if I do not help him, he will die. He will walk onto that field tomorrow, and the bulls will burn him, and that will be the end of a man who had come all this way across the world, and who stood in my father and Apos' hall with that particular steadiness that...
She stopped.
I am in very serious trouble.
She went to a crossroads outside the palace, the kind of three-way crossing where Hecate is powerful, and made an offering. Oil and herbs and a small piece of the gold her mother had given her, because some prayers cost more than words.
Lady of the threshold. Lady of what cannot be undone. Tell me what I am.
The goddess, as she is known to do, answered in silence. But Medea was trained to read silence. She went back inside. She took her preparation box from its shelf. She opened it. She began to work. Dawn. The sacred grove outside the palace. Jason arrived before her. He stood among the old trees and listened to the birds and thought about nothing, which is a technique he had learned from Chiron for managing fear. Medea arrived with a small cloth-wrapped parcel and 2 people he did not know and who left immediately when they saw he was alone.
Anoint yourself with this at dawn tomorrow. Every part of you that will face the bull's arms, chest, face. It will protect you from the fire for 1 day.
1 day?
That should be enough, if you are as capable as the crew believes you are.
How do you know what the crew believes?
I have been listening to your crew since the moment you arrived.
He looked at her for a moment.
What do you want in return?
When this is done, when you take the fleece and go, take me with you.
With us.
I cannot stay here once my father knows what I did. And he will know. He always knows.
Where would you go?
Wherever you go. Greece, you said. Iolcus.
That is a long way from here. From everything you know.
I am aware of that. I have thought about nothing else for 3 days.
I swear on Zeus and Hera, who I believe has some interest in this voyage, that I will take you to Greece. That you will come with me as an equal, not a prize. That if we survive this, you will stand in my house as my wife.
You say that very easily.
I mean it.
Heroes always mean it at the beginning.
She said it quietly. Not bitterly. Almost as a piece of information she wanted him to have. The morning of the trial. Jason anointed himself with the charm before dawn, alone in the ship. Then he walked to the field of Ars, the black plain, the smoking stalls where the bulls waited, and he did not hurry. Each watched from a raised platform with his sons and his guards. The crowd of the city had gathered beyond the field and Apos' edge. Medea stood at the far back of the crowd where she would not be noticed. The bulls were released. They came out of the stalls at a run, already breathing fire, already in the state of aggression they were built for. Jason did not run. The fire hit him and did nothing. He stood in the flames that should have killed him, and they flowed around him like water around a stone. The yoking was brutal. The bulls were enormous and fire-hot to the touch, and they did not want to be yoked. Jason fought them the way a man fights something that should be able to kill him but cannot quite figure out why it isn't an appos, working. First one bull. Then the second. Both yoked by the time the morning was well started. He plowed the field. The black earth turned. The field of ours smelled of fire and something older. Then he sowed the dragon and appos, teeth. One at a time into the turned earth, with the methodical precision of someone who has plowed difficult ground before and knows that the work itself demands attention even when the work itself is insane. The earth was quiet for a moment after the last tooth was buried. Then it was not quiet. The earth opened. The Spartoi rose, the sown men, born of dragon and appos, teeth, already armed, already angry, already looking for something to fight. Jason had been warned about this. Medea had told him exactly what to do. He picked up a large stone from the edge of the field and waited until the Spartoi were fully emerged and organized and beginning to orient toward him. Then he threw the stone into their midst. The stone hit no one in particular but landed among them with a noise, and warriors who are born angry and cannot see clearly who threw it will turn on whoever is nearest. The Spartoi killed each other. Jason watched from the field and appos' edge. The field, which had been sown with dragon and appos' teeth at sunrise, was dark again by mid-morning. Jason was still standing.
He had help. Someone helped him.
His son Absitas, standing beside him. No one could get close enough to help him, father. We had guards on the field boundaries.
And yet.
He looked across the crowd to where his daughters were standing. Chalciope had her hand over her mouth. Medea was very still. Aeetes was not a man who showed his hand before he was ready. He invited Jason to the evening feast, congratulated him on the trial, and said nothing at all about the fleece. Then he called his war council.
Tonight. The Greeks have not yet left the river. We burn the ship and kill the crew before dawn. Whatever help my daughter gave them, it ends tonight. No witnesses leave Colchis.
The news reached Medea within the hour. She had people who told her things, she had always cultivated people who told her things, and the people who told her things this night did not make her hesitate.
He knows.
She took her preparation case, the small knife consecrated to Hecate, the piece of gold from her mother, and a cloak. She did not take much. She had understood, on some level, that this was always going to be a quick departure.
My father will attack the ship at dawn. We go now. Tonight. The fleece is in the grove, I know the way, I know the dragon. We go now and we do not come back.
Tonight.
Right now. Is your crew ready?
They will be.
Then move.
They went through the dark together, just the two of them, to the grove of ours. The grove was old. Older than the city. Older than Aeetes. The trees were massive and dark, and the ground between them was soft in a way that suggested it had absorbed things over a long time. The golden fleece glowed on the oak from 50 yards away. Not brightly, not like a torch, but steadily, like something that cannot help being visible. The dragon lay coiled at the base of the oak. It was enormous, sources disagree on exactly how enormous, and it had never, in living memory, slept. It looked at them. Not with the confusion of an animal that doesn't understand what it sees. It looked at them the way something looks when it knows exactly what is happening and is deciding how to respond.
Wait here.
Medea walked toward the dragon alone. She sang. It was not a word from any language Jason had ever heard, a prayer form old enough that the language it was written in no longer existed as a spoken tongue. She had learned it from Hecate and Apos, own rites, in the deepest chamber of the temple where novices are not permitted. The dragon watched her. Its great coils slowed. The light in its eyes dimmed, like coals going from red to gray.
Sleep. You have kept watch long enough. Sleep now.
The dragon slept. It had not slept in, the sources do not agree on the time, but it was a very long time. It slept the way something sleeps when it has been waiting for permission and has finally received it.
Now.
Jason reached up and took the fleece from the oak. It was heavier than he expected. Warm. Brighter up close than at a distance. He held it and felt. He would try to describe this later and never find words that satisfied him, like he was holding the weight of everything that had brought him to this moment.
We have it.
Then we leave. Quickly. The dragon will wake eventually, and when it does, my father will know within minutes.
They ran. Through the grove and down to the river, and the Argo was there, oars dipped, crew silent and ready in the way that the crew of a ship becomes silent and ready when the captain is doing something dangerous on shore and they have nothing to do but wait and be ready. Medea climbed aboard. The crew looked at her. No one asked a question.
Row. Go.
The Argo moved down the phases toward the Euxine. Behind them, lights began to appear in the palace of Aeetes. Torches moving. Voices, eventually. Then the sounds of Colchis waking to the knowledge that the fleece was gone.
He is awake.
Good. Let him be awake. We have a river between us.
We will not always have a river between us.
No. Then we will have the sea.
They reached the open sea as dawn was breaking. The fleece was lashed at the prow. Jason had decided to keep it visible, and it caught the first light and threw it back across the water in a way that made the crew row harder, without being asked, as though the light itself were a command. Medea sat in the stern and watched the coast of Colchis recede. She watched it a long time. The Colchian fleet launched at first light. It was a serious fleet, ships built for the Euxine, crewed by men who had sailed it their whole lives, and led by officers who had not spent the last several months rowing across the known world. The Argo had a lead. But the lead was not as large as Jason would have liked.
Can we outrun them?
Typhus, the helmsman, the best navigator alive, some said, looked at the pursuing fleet and looked at the wind and looked at the state of his crew. He said, for a while. Then it depends.
On what?
On what Medea is willing to do. What Medea did during the chase, the sources are careful here. The Apollonius version involves her brother Upsitters and a series of events at an island that are not comfortable to read. What the sources agree on, the pursuit ended. The Colchian fleet turned back. The Argo gained the open sea and was not followed. The cost, whatever it was paid. And the Argo sailed west. The return voyage was, in many accounts, longer and stranger than the outbound journey. The gods argued about the route. Some sources have the Argo sailing up the Danube and across to the Adriatic, others send it to Libya, others to Circe, to Scylla and Charybdis, to the Planctae rocks. The mythology is less interested in consistent geography than it is in giving Jason and Medea enough time together, under enough pressure, to become what they were.
You never told me what the charm was made from.
No.
Can you tell me now?
The crocus that grew where Prometheus and Apos' blood fell. Among other things. Things Idon and Apos' name outside the temple.
The Titan.
Yes. His blood makes things that fire cannot touch. It seems appropriate.
You prepared it the night before, while I was trying to sleep.
I prepared it 2 nights before, in case you were found out and needed it earlier.
He looked at her.
You planned ahead for my survival.
I have planned ahead for your survival several times by now.
Medea, alone, on the night watch.
I know exactly what I gave up. I had years to imagine who I would be in that palace. I was going to be the most accomplished priestess of Hecate in the kingdom. I was going to know things no one else knew and make things no one else could make. I still know those things. I can still make those things. I just have to do it in a country where no one has heard of Hecate and no one will understand what a priestess is.
She was quiet for a while.
That is fine. I have been preparing for things my whole life. I can prepare for this.
Some accounts send the Argo to the island of Aeaea, the home of Circe, who was Aeetes and Apos' sister and Medea and Apos' aunt by the most literal of divine genealogies. Circe purified them from the blood guilt of the chase. She did it without enthusiasm. She was Aeetes and Apos' sister, after all, and she had a better-than-average idea of what Medea had done to escape, but she did it, because ritual obligation does not care about family feelings. She did not wish them well when they left. At the straits where Scylla hunts and Charybdis pulls ships down, the sea goddess Thetis appeared at the bow and her daughters the Nereids guided the ship through, passing it hand to hand between the rocks like something precious being carried by a relay. Hera had arranged this. The goddess was determined that her hero would get home. Orpheus played through the passage because that was what he did at moments of extremity, and the music helped. In Libya they were storm-driven onto a desolate shore and had to carry the ship, the entire ship, overland across the desert for 12 days to reach navigable water. This section of the voyage is almost certainly the most miserable. 50 men. A trireme. Desert.
Pick up the ship.
And they picked up the ship. In the desert, Mopsus the seer stepped on a snake. Libyan serpent, the quick death kind. He was dead before anyone knew what had happened. They buried him in the sand. The greatest seer of his generation, who had seen futures and guided ships and read the wind and the birds and the entrails of sacrifices for years, killed by not watching where he stepped in an unfamiliar desert. The voyage teaches you that greatness does not protect against the small and the local and the unlucky. At Crete they met Talos. Talos was a bronze man, made by Hephaestus, given to Minos to guard Crete, 3 times daily circling the island to drive off strangers. He was enormous. He threw boulders. He was, for practical purposes, invincible. Except for one place on his ankle where a bronze nail stopped the ichor, the divine fluid that flowed through him in place of blood, from draining. Medea looked at Talos. She looked at him for a long time, with the focused attention of a woman who has spent her whole life understanding how things are built and therefore how they come apart.
The nail in the ankle. If the nail comes out.
She invoked Hecate. She fixed her gaze on the bronze giant. She directed, the sources call it the evil eye, the destroying gaze, at the nail in his ankle. The nail worked loose. The ichor poured out of the ankle like water from a cracked vessel. The enormous bronze figure wobbled. It stumbled, a motion that should have been impossible in something with no inner life but which bronze apparently manages when enough of what constitutes its life is draining away, and fell into the sea. The splash was audible from the other side of the island. The Argo sailed into the Cretan harbor unmolested. The Aegean. The familiar sea. The islands they had passed on the outbound journey, smaller and more intimate than the open Euxine. Medea stood at the prow and looked at the sea that was not hers and tried to find something familiar in it. She found nothing familiar. She stayed at the prow anyway.
The island ahead, Aegina, then the Saronic Gulf, then the coast of Thessaly.
How long?
3, and then Iolcus.
They made Iolcus on a morning 3 months after the launch, or perhaps a year after, depending on which account you follow, with 50 heroes and a Colchian princess and a Golden Fleece and a ship that had sailed farther than any Greek ship before it. The harbor was crowded. People had heard. People had been hearing for months, in the way that news of extraordinary things moves along trade routes and fishing boats and the gossip of harbors. The Argo came in under its own power, Orpheus playing at the bow. The fleece caught the morning light and threw it back across the water and the harbor, and the crowds went quiet for a moment at the sight of it. It was real. It had been a story, and now it was real, and that particular transition, from story to real, is always more complicated than it sounds, because the story was everyone and Apos, and the real thing belongs to the person who holds it. Jason held it.
You lived.
I said I would.
And you brought it back.
I brought it back. Now, my father, free him, and the throne you promised.
Pelias looked at the fleece. He looked at it the way a man looks at a thing he was certain was impossible and is now adjusting his understanding of what the world contains.
The throne. Yes. Of course. We must, there are ceremonies. Protocols. Give me a week to arrange the proper succession rites.
Jason looked at him. He had been trained by a centaur and he had crossed the simple gates and he had stood in a field of fire-breathing bulls and walked out the other side. He had learned many things on this voyage. One of them was how a man sounds when he is buying time.
A week, then the throne and my father and Apos, as freedom.
Of course.
Medea stood behind Jason and watched Pelias. She watched him the way she had watched Talos on the shore of Crete, with the focused attention of a woman who has spent her whole life understanding how things are built and therefore how they come apart. She saw a man who had no intention of honoring the agreement. She saw a man who was already calculating how to use the week he had bought. She had a solution. Medea went to the daughters of Pelias. She told them she had a way to make their father young again. She demonstrated with an old ram, cutting it into pieces, boiling the pieces in a cauldron with specific herbs, and drawing out a young lamb. This was true. She had done this. The ram had worked. The daughters believed her. They killed their father. In good faith. With love, even. They were trying to give him back his youth. Medea had given them herbs that did not work on human flesh. The daughters of Pelias discovered this too late. Pelias was dead. Jason heard what had happened. The sources do not record what he said to Medea. They record only that he did not ask her not to have done it.
He is dead.
He was not going to honor the agreement. You knew that.
Yes.
Then.
A long silence.
Then.
But Iolcus did not give Jason the throne. The city was in grief and then in anger, and even those who had disliked Pelias had not wanted him to die in a cauldron. Jason and Medea were driven from Iolcus. The throne that Jason had sailed to the edge of the world for, and back, the throne they left. They walked out of Iolcus with less than they had arrived with. The fleece, which had started this whole chain of events, was dedicated to the temple at Orchomenus, returned, in a sense, to the country it had been meant to protect.
Where do we go?
Corinth. King Creon is said to be hospitable to exiles and to value useful people.
You have thought about this.
I think about everything. You should know that by now.
They went to Corinth. And there they built a life, or the beginning of one, a house, children, a place in the community. Jason had standing from the voyage. Medea had her reputation, which was useful in a city that respected power even when it was afraid of it. For a while, it worked. For a while. Corinth in the early years after the voyage was, in its way, a good place. Medea was respected, feared, certainly, but fear in the ancient world often functions as a form of respect. Jason was celebrated. The Argonauts, scattered back to their own cities, told the story in their own halls. The Golden Fleece hung in the temple of Orchomenus and glowed with the last light of something that had once been divine. Years passed. In Corinth, years pass with the particular quality of years in a prosperous city. They are full of activity and progress and they pile up before you notice them. And then something changed. King Creon had a daughter named Glauce. And Jason, who had sailed to the end of the world and back, who had been loved across the Euxine by the most brilliant woman in Colchis, Jason began to consider a political marriage. Medea knew before he told her. She always knew. It was one of the things about her that had saved his life and served him well on the voyage, and that now, at this moment, was the most terrible quality a woman could possess. She knew. And the story of what she did with that knowledge, what a mother does.